All right, I always clap, point. I'm not gonna do that this time. Welcome back to 5 Spiritual Practices for the Quarantine Teen. This is the very last episode. If you missed the intro in episodes 1 through 4, I want you to stop, go back, watch those videos, and start to put those things into practice in your everyday life. I hate Facebook. Zuckerberg, if you're watching this, why did you do this to us? It's like a toxic waste dump for most people's thoughts, but it does serve a purpose for me at least, because I love when Facebook notifies me of important days in the lives of people I love. Like Facebook will tell you whose birthday it is, it'll tell you about when their anniversary is, and sometimes even if you have a newborn child, you can post about it, or you can post about when you just got engaged, and it'll let us all know, and that's great. And those are some important days, so typically what we want to do is to stop. We like to think of that person during that time. We like to talk to them, celebrate with them, but when you fail to do so, it can potentially put a strain in the relationship. Just think of how you feel if you've ever forgotten to tell somebody happy birthday, especially if you've spent most of the day with them. See, when you're in a relationship with someone, a dating relationship or a friendship or a marriage, one way to show that person that you love them is by thinking of them. Not just 1 or 2 days out of the year that really stand out in their lives, but as often as you can. And the same is true when it comes to a relationship with Jesus. If you're in a relationship with him, you don't want to allow yourself the chance to ever forget him. And you don't want to just think of him 1 or 2 days out of the year, the days that really matter to him, Christmas and Easter. You want to think of him way more than that. And after all, we're supposed to be really close to him, right? I love the quote that says, "May you be covered in the dust of your rabbi." That means that you should be following Jesus that closely. You need to be thinking of him that often. The problem is, our lives are very busy, and our focus can quickly turn from Jesus to distractions or the task at hand. And you may start the morning just like I do. You have a cup of coffee in your hand, and you're reading the Bible, and it's a great way to start the day, just you and Jesus. But then, how quickly you forget that he's there, because you go to school or you go to work, or if you're watching in the time of right here and now, April 2020 during the coronavirus, you're going from room to room, seeing the same people every single day, doing almost the same thing every single day, and you're annoyed and you're irritated, you're easily frustrated, and if you're like me, you're basically just over this whole pandemic thing, and by lunchtime, your thoughts probably aren't even anywhere close to thinking about Jesus. Your thoughts aren't close to thinking about Jesus? Your thoughts are nowhere near Jesus. The problem is, forgetting him as we continue to go on throughout our day forces us to compartmentalize our faith and separate it from all other areas of our lives. That's why you hear so often that people are one way in church and they're a completely different way outside of church. What we need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen is to continually refocus ourselves back to Jesus, to remind ourselves that he permeates every single area of our lives. Yeah, he's here with you in church, but he's also present with you at school. He's also there with you at your job, and yes, he's even with you at home during quarantine. We just need to remind ourselves of that presence. I kind of itch my nose. I washed my hands, so that's okay. Growing up, my favorite drink was Dr. Pepper, and I got to go to the Dr. Pepper Museum in Waco when I was younger, and I remember learning a little bit about their history and seeing the old Dr. Pepper bottles. And if you've ever seen one, you'll notice that behind Dr. Pepper, there's like a clock that says 10, 2, and 4. And Dr. Pepper said that according to the research, people experience fatigue and loss of energy at 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 4 p.m. So to get that energy back, what you should do is down a Dr. Pepper at those specific times. In fact, when they were headquartered in Dallas, Dr. Pepper had a clock tower with a face that only had those 3 times on its face. And while I hope to God that you don't have specific times set in your schedule where you just chug a soda, I do think it's wise for you to set aside some fixed hours in order for you to focus your attention back to Jesus. And there's a spiritual practice for this, and it's called the daily office. Office coming from the Latin word opus, which means to work, or means, my favorite translation, practice. And what this practice does is give us a chance to refocus our thoughts and never give ourselves a chance to forget about Jesus. We can remember him whenever, whatever we're doing, where we're at, regardless of what's going on in the world. And up to this point, we've been looking at the life of Jesus and trying to pull some spiritual practices out of his life so we can train ourselves to godliness and to live our lives as if it were Jesus himself living them through us. And while Jesus did, as Mark 1:35 tells us, go pray very early in the morning, he didn't necessarily have consistent fixed hours where he would stop and turn his attention back to God. And that's primarily because the first century Jewish culture didn't have to do that. Their lives were centered around everything God. We, on the other hand, living in 21st century America, can't say the same. Our lives are centered more around our work schedules or school or, our dance recitals or football schedules or social media, whatever it may be. We have, as I mentioned earlier, separated our lives into different compartments where our time isn't really dictated by God. Instead, we're mostly content to give him the leftovers after we've already spent our time on all the other things that we've put ahead of him. The daily office, what I love about it is that it starts to change that. It starts to give you a chance to remember that Jesus is in control of everything, including your time. Pete Scazzero, in his book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, writes this: the daily office practiced consistently actually eliminates any division of the sacred and the secular in our lives. Meaning you won't forget to bring God with you when you go to school, or you won't leave him at church when you walk out the front doors. Instead, you'll allow yourself to think of God all throughout the day by actually scheduling intentional spaces where you just focus your attention back to him. That's what the daily office is. It's fixed hours where you just simply stop, you focus on God, and you remember that he is in control and that he is in charge. It started to become a practice of Christian monks based on Psalm 119, 164 that says, 7 times a day I praise you for your righteous laws. And if you're around monasteries, even to this day, you'll hear that there will be bells that will toll 7 different times throughout the day. And no matter what the monk is doing, whether they're reading or writing or working, they will stop what they're doing and they will focus their attention back to God. And according to that book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, there are 4 elements to the daily office. If you're taking notes, I want you to write these down. Number 1 is stopping. So it's as simple as that. You stop what you're doing. No matter if you're working out or watching TV or playing guitar, whatever it may be, stop what you're doing. Number 2 is centering, which is a space where you move into God's presence and you realign yourself with him. So maybe you've gotten off balance throughout the day. Maybe from the morning to noon, somebody got on your nerves, or you just went off busy doing other things. This is the moment where you stop and you realign yourself back to God. The third element is silence, which we've talked about in a previous video. So it's simple. You just sit still in the presence of God, knowing that he's in control, he's there with you wherever you are. And the fourth element is scripture. This is self-explanatory. It's your Bible. You can read a verse, you can read a psalm, whatever it may be for you. And this is a really simple practice, and it's super beneficial to your life. But to kind of help you along, I want to give you some ways that you can start to put this into practice right now. The first thing you can do is pick 2 or 3 times a day when you want to focus your attention back to God. This might come from observing your own life. If you know that, at 7 o'clock, your attention starts to drift, or somewhere around noon, you stop, you get angry, I don't know. Whatever it is, you can pick a time to where you want to realign your focus and your attention back to God. I used to do morning, noon, and night, but I'm still readjusting as I'm trying to put this practice into my life. The nighttime didn't work for me. I can't figure out a time. I'm working on it. What do you want from me? Number 2, set an alarm on your phone. You can do this right now. You just pull out your phone, you open up your clock or your schedule or whatever your calendar may be, and put an alarm and put daily office as the label. It's that simple. Number 3 is practice and adjust. The beauty of the daily office is that it's not like one thing done a certain way every time. You can constantly readjust the times. You can readjust what you're doing to draw your attention back to God. If you want to read a psalm, you can do that, or read the verse of the day, or say a pre-written prayer, listen to worship music, draw a picture, whatever it is. You can do whatever you need to do. The most important thing is that you're focusing on God. And you can just adjust the times and what you do as you continue along and you find what draws your attention back to God the best. Number 4, and the last thing, this is the same with any other practice, just continue to practice. This isn't just one and done kind of thing. This isn't something you do for a week and expect it to have any significant changes. I started putting it into a practice, and after a long time, I've noticed that the closer it gets to noon, which is one of my daily offices, I'll find that my attention already starts naturally to drift back to God, because you've trained yourself to start to think of it. You've put it into a rhythm of your life, and it's going to be hard for you to ignore God in those moments that you're training yourself not to. So that's it. Those are 5 spiritual practices, guys. I love you. I am genuinely praying that these things take root in your lives, that you're starting to put them into practice now. I want you to develop the deepest roots possible in your relationship with Jesus. And I know that we all have that vision of that 10 out of 10 follower of Jesus 10 years down the line. We want to be the best husband and wife and father and parent, whatever, following Jesus. And I want you right now to start to put in place a system that will produce that kind of the person that you know you can be 10 years down the line. It starts now. It starts with you dedicating yourself and disciplining yourself and putting these things into practice. I love you. Bye.
That was like an actual outro.
Was it?